From Colorado's news leader, this is 9 News at 10.
In the final days of his administration, President Clinton has ordered that millions of acres of land be off limits to development of any kind. Tomorrow, the president will approve a Forest Service regulation that designates 58 million acres as conservation areas. Much of the land is in the Rockies and includes Pagoda Peak in Colorado. Pagoda Peak is located on the western slope north of Glenwood Springs. The other conservation areas include the American River's North Fork in California, South Quinault Ridge in Washington State, and Alaska's Tongass National Forest. The new regulation prohibits new logging and commercial development. Supporters say it is a master stroke of environmental defense. Critics, though, warn it will block drilling for natural gas needed to heat homes.
Cutting-edge medical technology saved the...
From Colorado's news leader, this is 9 News Daybreak.
President Clinton is expected to designate 58 million acres of forest land as conservation areas today, making it off limits to any kind of development. Much of the land is in the Rockies and includes Pagoda Peak in Colorado. Pagoda Peak is located on the western slope north of Glenwood Springs. Other conservation areas include the American River's North Fork in California, South Quinault Ridge in Washington State, and Alaska's Tongass National Forest. The new Forest Service regulation prohibits logging and commercial development. Supporters say it is a master stroke of environmental defense, but critics warn that it's going to block drilling for natural gas needed to heat homes.
1 year after
From Colorado's news leader, this is 9 News 6 a.m.
Today, President Clinton will approve a Forest Service regulation that limits logging and development in nearly 60 million acres of national forest land. Many Republicans in Congress are already urging President-elect Bush to reverse that decision. The plan covers 38 states, mostly in the West. One of the places included in Colorado is Pagoda Peak, that is on the western slope just north of Glenwood Springs. Colorado Governor Bill Owens says he is upset about the decision because President Clinton failed to involve state and local leaders in the planning process. Owens says he hopes the plan is overturned when the Bush administration takes office.
Despite some heavy snow in the past few
You're watching Colorado's News Channel. This is News 4 at 10.
Well, firefighters had hoped to have a wildfire burning near San Diego contained tonight, but now they say it could be Monday. That fire has scorched more than 10,000 acres in Alpine, west of San Diego. Cooler temperatures and rising humidity have helped the firefighters today, because so far that fire has destroyed 6 homes. That happened earlier this week. It's believed the fire was started by a cigarette thrown from a car early Wednesday morning. The Forest Service says the fire is 60% surrounded, and many of the firefighters have already been sent home. Well, Congress officially put George...
President Clinton has announced a sweeping new measure to protect U.S. forests from road construction and logging. He made that announcement at the National Arboretum in Washington today. It'll protect about a third of all U.S. Forest Service land in 39 states, including California. It is the latest in a series of new rules the president is rushing to impose before his presidency ends on January 20th.
Firefighting is dangerous, back-breaking work. It's also a job a lot of people want to have. And today, there was one place where some folks got their first shot at it. Cheryl Kahn has more.
Yeah, make sure you keep it out of the ladder field.
You've seen them on TV. Forest Service firefighters battling wildfires. It's a tough, dangerous, uncomfortable job, and these people can't wait to do it.
You could put an A on it, jump out of airplane.
Some of them may have a chance. They're among the applicants vying for more than 3,000 U.S. Forest Service firefighting positions around the country. At job fairs like this one in South Central, veteran firefighters answer questions.
California is hiring the most.
And help wannabe firefighters with the pages of paperwork.
What is your experience as far as fire suppression in a hand crew?
That could send them on their way to this. To stand a chance of making it, they must be willing to work in primitive conditions, sometimes going days on end without a shower, and they have to be pretty strong.
We construct line, we lay hose, we hike up mountains, we stay overnight on the mountains. You have to have lots of endurance because we go hours and hours without a break.
Carolyn Goretzky and Brian Wilson lead commercial camping trips and are also boyfriend and girlfriend. They say handling the gear should be no problem.
Pretty light, actually.
They look at the whole experience as an adventure.
I kind of find it fascinating, interesting.
And they both say they have what it takes to do the job.
Just the motivation to help, not just fires, but people as well, and some of the medical aspects behind it. It's just a genuine concern for people and places.
If they do make it, they'll work 6 months out of the year, starting at $9.55 an hour with lots of overtime and lots of stories to tell at the end of the fire season. In South Central, Cheryl Kahn, Fox 11 News.
Action News, Delaware Valley's leading news program with David Murphy, Scott Palmer, and Anita Brickman.
Welcome back. President Clinton has announced a sweeping measure to protect forests from road construction and logging. Clinton made that announcement at the National Arboretum in Washington. The measure protects nearly 60 million acres of Forest Service land in 39 states. Critics say the policy will disrupt new exploration for oil and natural gas.
Denver 7. This is 7 News at 11.
According to the U.S. Forest Service, the ban on new national forest roads has little impact on existing ski areas. Officials say the rules won't prohibit those ski areas from expanding inside their permit areas, building roads, or cutting timber to construct ski runs. But it does block efforts to expand ski areas or build or develop new ones. The U.S. Forest Service handed down that rule on Friday.
There's a job opening in town that has lots of people lined up and even camping out. That's because West Metro Fire is looking for a few good firefighters. Every 2 years, West Metro Fire holds a testing process to determine a hiring list. And from that list, people are hired to replace those who leave through attrition, such as retirement, or to increase their actual workforce. Some potential candidates camped out at Fire Station number 10.
This afternoon, President Clinton announced a sweeping measure to protect U.S. forests from road construction and logging. Mr. Clinton ordered about a third of all U.S. Forest Service lands be safeguarded. That adds up to almost 60 million acres. The rule affects 39 states. Most are in the West, but forests in Virginia and West Virginia are included. Critics say this policy will hurt new exploration for oil and natural gas. The order is expected to be challenged in Congress and in the courts.
WXI TV in Atlanta. You're watching 11 Alive News at 5:30.
For those of you just joining us, welcome back. I'm Dee O'Reilly.
And I'm Wes Sargentson. Metro area teens could have to wait an extra year to get their driver's licenses.
The story tops today's local news. Governor Roy Barnes says today he's considering legislation. President Clinton makes one of his biggest conservation moves just days before leaving office. The president has approved a Forest Service regulation which will make 58 million acres off limits to most new road construction, logging, and commercial development. Most of the affected land is in the Rockies, but the rule will take effect in Alaska's Tongass National Forest in 2004. President-elect Bush and others have expressed interest in opening some of Alaska's wildlife areas to oil drilling.
Covering the day's local news. This is News 10 at 6.
Some precious, pristine parts of the Tahoe National Forest may stay that way, along with other national forests.
And that's thanks to an executive order President Clinton calls his gift to future generations. But some Republicans say the plan to protect a third of federal forest land from logging and road building goes too far. Millions of acres across the country show no signs of civilization, no logging, no traffic, a place where the animals rule. President Clinton wants to make sure it stays that way.
These areas represent some of the last, best unprotected wildlands anywhere in America.
The new federal protection is massive, extending to federal forests in nearly 40 states. Under the executive order, commercial logging is severely limited. The ban on road construction covers 58 million acres.
We acknowledge that we cannot afford to maintain the roads that we have. It just didn't make sense to us to build more roads when we can't really take care of what we already have. So why not stop building roads in the areas that are extremely sensitive and controversial?
The new regulations protect a wide stretch in Northern California, including the Plumas, Tahoe, El Dorado, and Stanislaus National Forests, and the Lake Tahoe Basin.
We have in common our view that nature is a priceless but fragile gift, an important part of the fabric of our lives, and a major part of our responsibility to our children.
Some Republicans say today's order hurts the timber, mining, and energy industries, that it's too restrictive.
This administration in its final days has been a busy beaver, and we will review all regulations and executive orders upon coming into office on January 20th.
Critics say what the outgoing president gave environmentalists in one executive order, the incoming president just may take away with an order of his own. And for a link to detailed information and maps of the national forests that are affected, just click onto our website at kxtv10.com.
'49 News at 10.
What seemed like a sturdy, dependable portable crib, we had no idea.
This Washington State baby died after getting trapped in a baby crib. Tonight, her family says, don't let it happen to you. Good evening, I'm Eric Schmidt.
And I'm Stephanie Fisher. Welcome to Fox 49 News at 10.
With only 2 weeks left in his presidency, Bill Clinton has the timber industry and some Republicans up in arms. He just declared about 60 million acres of forest land off limits by announcing a forest protection rule in 38 states. Fox's David Schuster has more.
Determined to establish an environmental legacy, President Clinton appeared in the National Arboretum and declared nearly a third of the country's federal forest lands off limits to most logging.
I am proud to announce that we will protect nearly 60 million acres of pristine forest land for future generations. That is an area greater in size than all our national parks combined.
It's also an area that includes 9 million acres in Alaska's Tongass National Forest, something the administration wasn't even considering 6 months ago. Under the rules, the Forest Service will ban road building where no roads currently exist. That means all national forest lands that have never been developed will stay that way. And in some areas that are accessible by roads, the regulations will permit logging only to help with firefighting or other preservation activities.
Today we free the land so that they will remain unspoiled by bulldozers, undisturbed by chainsaws, and untouched for our children.
The sweeping plan, which is being blasted by energy, timber, and mining industries, is just the latest in a flurry of major last-minute environmental initiatives. The Clinton administration has given several wildlife areas the same status as national monuments, banned oil drilling off the coast of California, and outlawed snowmobiling in national parks.
These are public lands. They're not Bill Clinton's lands, and they're not the federal government's lands. I find all of what he's done objectionable because he denied the people their right to speak on how these lands get designated.
Other Republicans called the regulations fatally flawed and vowed to find a way to get them overturned. One way might be with the help of President-elect Bush.
This administration in its final days has been a busy beaver, and we will review all regulations and executive orders upon coming into office on January 20th.
But reversing the forest plan may not be so easy. Some Republicans support President Clinton's action, and getting a new rule in place would seem to require another lengthy round of public hearings and review. At the White House, David Schuster, Fox News.
Oregon environmentalists are making another final appeal to President Clinton to designate another national monument, this one protecting more than 1 million acres in southwestern Oregon. It represents the biggest chunk of undeveloped forest on the west coast. The Wild Rivers National Monument proposal is not among the areas the president earmarked for preservation.
Just days before the end of his administration, President Clinton will make one of his most significant conservation actions. Today, he plans to announce a new Forest Service regulation that eventually puts 58 million acres off limits to most road construction, logging, and commercial development. Much of the land is in the Rocky Mountains. Critics warn it will block drilling for natural gas needed to heat homes. Logging, mining, and drilling interests threaten a legal and political fight to overturn the measure, but supporters call it a masterstroke of environmental defense.
What we will have is for our children and grandchildren a heritage of wild forest lands that will be available for centuries.
President-elect George W. Bush says he will consider opening at least one wildlife area to oil drilling, and Gail Norton, Bush's pick to run the Interior Department, is a critic of land regulation as well.
You're watching Fox 2, Hawaii's news channel, broadcasting from the KHON TV Broadcast Center in Hawaii Tower.
This is the Channel 2 News at 10 with Joe Moore, Hawaii's #1 news.
It appears that President Bill Clinton wants to leave the Oval Office with a legacy of environmental initiatives. Today, Mr. Clinton declared about 60 million acres of forest land off limits, and that has timber industry officials and some Republicans up in arms. David Schuster reports.
Determined to establish an environmental legacy, President Clinton appeared in the National Arboretum and declared nearly a third of the country's federal forest lands off limits to most logging.
I am proud to announce that we will protect nearly 60 million acres of pristine forest land for future generations. That is an area greater in size than all our national parks combined.
It's also an area that includes 9 million acres in Alaska's Tongass National Forest, something the administration wasn't even considering 6 months ago. Under the rules, the Forest Service will ban road building where no roads currently exist. That means all national forest lands that have never been developed will stay that way. And in some areas that are accessible by roads, the regulations will permit logging only to help with firefighting or other preservation activities.
Today we free the land so that they will remain unspoiled by bulldozers, undisturbed by chainsaws, and untouched for our children.
The sweeping plan, which is being blasted by energy, timber, and mining industries, is just the latest in a flurry of major last-minute environmental initiatives. The Clinton administration has given several wildlife areas the same status as national monuments, banned oil drilling off the coast of California, and outlawed snowmobiling in national parks.
These are public lands. They're not Bill Clinton's lands, and they're not the federal government's lands. I find all of what he's done objectionable because he denied the people their right to speak on how these lands get designated.
Other Republicans called the regulations fatally flawed and vowed to find a way to get them overturned. One way might be with the help of President-elect Bush.
This administration in its final days has been a busy beaver, and we will review all regulations and executive orders upon coming into office on January 20th.
But reversing the forest plan may not be so easy. Some Republicans support President Clinton's action, and getting a new rule in place would seem to require another lengthy round of public hearings and review. At the White House, David Schuster, Fox News.
Had several new water main breaks today in the city of Jackson, and it's affecting local businesses in ways you may not realize. U.S. Attorney Brad Pygott talks to us about his decision to resign. And 2 buildings and several acres of land are lost in a grass fire in Byron.
You're watching the WLBT 6 p.m. report.
Tonight, Jackson's and the U.S. Forest Service has dropped plans for 5 timber sales projects on public lands. The project areas were in the DeSoto, Homachita, and Tom Bigby National Forests. The Sierra Club named those projects along with more than 50 others in the South in a lawsuit aimed at halting logging. The suit said the logging practices would cause severe harm to numerous forest species.
President Clinton will approve a new Forest Service regulation that will put 58 million acres, much of it in the off-limits Rockies, off-limits to most road construction. No new logging or commercial development allowed, but critics warn that it'll block drilling for natural gas that's needed to heat homes. Locations included in the ban are the Pagoda Peak in Colorado, the American River's North Fork in California, South Quinault Ridge in Washington State, and in 2004, the Tongass National Forest in Alaska will be added. And welcome back. It's the biggest land conservation effort in decades. President Clinton is approving an order putting close to 1/3 of national forest land permanently off limits to future road building, logging, and oil drilling. Opponents are already hoping to stop the plan. Leanne Gregg reports now from Denver.
A massive protection plan means no more new logging, no new roads, and no oil and gas development across close to 60 million acres of national forest, much of it in the Rockies. In the final days of his administration, President Clinton announces approval of the historic regulation affecting land in 39 states.
Today we free the land so that they will remain unspoiled by bulldozers, undisturbed by chainsaws, and untouched for our children.
Included in the ban, Pagoda Peak in Colorado, the American River's North Fork in California, South Quinault Ridge in Washington State, and later in 2004, Alaska's Tongass National Forest. Critics from logging, mining, and drilling interests say they plan to block the Clinton regulation, threatening legal and political fights.
We've got a crisis here, an energy crisis, and we simply have to have these lands available for exploration.
Supporters of the Clinton plan say it's the legacy and heritage of wild forest lands they want to protect.
It's something that the American people who really love their forest really want to see happen.
Controversy over whether a great step forward or intrusion into land use decisions. The Clinton administration leaves with one of the biggest land protection moves in American history. Leanne Gregg, NBC News, Denver.
38 states with roadless areas will be subject to the president's forest conservation effort. And New Mexico and Texas will be states that will benefit from this effort. According to the U.S. Forest Service, about 4,000 acres will be protected throughout Texas. And in Mexico, 1,597,000 acres will be protected.
News on the American economy, and the Fed adds another interest rate cut. But will that be enough to head off a recession? Off limits. President Clinton's surprise move to save millions of acres of national forest. But will it save his legacy? In depth, the fugitives. The manhunt for 7 dangerous criminals goes nationwide as the FBI steps in. And the fleecing of America. Missing children. What could be worse? Taking advantage of that tragedy.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
At the same time, President Clinton is racing the clock, trying to catch a Republican president on the question of legacy. That president was Theodore Roosevelt. The legacy was the American wilderness. NBC's Bob Kerr tonight on this president's latest plan and the opposition lining up. Robert?
Hi there, Tom. Well, it's the biggest move of its kind in U.S. history, and in the final days of the Clinton administration, one of its most significant conservation actions. Tomorrow, the president approves a new Forest Service regulation that eventually puts 58 million acres, much of it in the Rockies, off limits to most road construction. No new logging or commercial development. And critics warn it'll block drilling for natural gas needed to heat homes. Included in the ban immediately, Pagoda Peak in Colorado, the American River's North Fork in California, South Quinault Ridge in Washington State, and later, in 2004, Alaska's Tongass National Forest.
What we will have is for our children and grandchildren a heritage of wild forest lands that will be available for centuries.
Supporters call it a masterstroke of environmental defense, but logging, mining, and drilling interests threaten a legal and political fight to overturn the move. move, battles that are complicated, costly, and could take years. Yet some in Congress already urging President-elect Bush to try to scrap what they call misguided regulations.
We've got a crisis here, an energy crisis, and we simply have to have these lands available for exploration.
Bush, a former Texas oil man, says he'd consider opening at least one wildlife area to oil drilling. And Gail Norton, Bush's pick to run the Interior Department, is a critic of land regulation.
Any fights to overturn this won't be resolved until Bill Clinton is long gone from the White House, content he did what he could for his legacy. Tom?
So are those critics correct when they say this is just a land grab to promote the Clinton legacy? NBC's Andrea Mitchell takes a closer look tonight at what seems to be the president's rush to make history in his final days.
When it comes to his legacy, Bill Clinton is playing beat the clock, and not just to protect forests. He's also expected to designate as national monuments 5 more scenic areas in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and 2 in Montana. 13 previous presidents have used the same 1906 law to protect pristine lands, but none more than Clinton. And there's more.
Strokes. Tomorrow, President Clinton will approve regulations that will ban roads on millions of acres of Forest Service land. Most of the 58 million acres of land eventually included in the ban are in the Rocky Mountains. Critics say the ban will block access to natural gas fields. A discarded cigarette and not a car fire may have caused a wildfire that scorched more than 10,000 acres and several homes in California. Nearly 2,000 firefighters are battling the blaze outside of San Diego. Officials say while the Santa Ana winds are dying down, the fire is still burning out of control. Well, Kim Bellick joins us now.
From NBC News, this is Today with Katie Couric and Matt Lauer, live from Studio 1A in Rockefeller Plaza.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Today on this Friday morning. I'm Katie Couric.
And I'm Matt Lauer. Officials say they believe
Firefighters outside San Diego say they are winning the battle against that big wildfire today. They hope to have it fully contained by tomorrow. High winds have died down, helping them out. The rare wintertime fire has charred 11,000 acres so far and destroyed at least 5 homes. Investigators think the blaze started when someone threw a cigarette from a car window. Ford.
Reporters in New York. This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We're going to begin tonight with We're going to take a closer look tonight at the federal regulation which the president approved today to effectively put millions of acres of public land off limits to future development or exploitation. More than 58 million acres of public land in 39 states would be protected from road building and from logging. Now, Mr. Clinton portrays this as an act of conservation in the interest of the nation as a whole, but he's bypassed the Congress, and those who disagree with what he's done